Are you going to try to stay from here up, though? So if I have to cheat and look at this real quick, I can.
Find your pants.
Yes. I could have come out pantless. No, that would have been bad.
Boxer shorts. Boxer.
Yes. Just so you know, I did change for you guys.
Oh.
I was wearing a very casual uniform today. So. All right.
That's it?
All right. So if you're recording and you didn't catch it earlier, my name's Commander Shawn, S-H-A-W-N, Eising, spelled E-I-S-I-N-G. You guys just want me to do a quick run through and then you'll follow up with questions?
Great.
All right. So on Wednesday evening, August 13th at approximately 6:45, our officers responded to the Oxford Ridge Playground. If you aren't familiar with that playground, it is actually located on Croton Road, just south of Sarno. It is a small playground for the community, children to play at, and the caller was indicating that a subject was sitting on one of the playground apparatuses and appeared to have his pants down and was fondling himself at that time. So our officers responded to the location. The caller was able to update us with a very vivid description of including clothing and characteristics so that the officer was able to arrive on scene and recognize the person immediately and make contact with the individual. The investigation did result in an arrest of a Jose O'Neill Caraballo. He was taken into custody for the exposure of sexual organs, lewd and lascivious acts, and a resisting without charge. Do you have any?
If you go to that park, it's got the playground is designed for kids. I believe 1 to like 9 or 6. It's like a really low number. So
yeah,
this guy's in a park with tiny children out there.
It is one of our smaller parks. It is designed for just that neighborhood to have a place to go and be able to take their children to play on a couple playground apparatuses. So yeah, it is designed for younger kids. It's not one of our more populated parks. So yeah, I agree. It is more geared towards the younger. Now, generally younger children tend to have their parents with them. The children that were there, the ones that called in, they're in the approximate 10-year age range, so they're of an age where they're starting to reasonably spread out, explore a little bit without, the parent guidance. But I will say, as a result of hearing the 911 call, these kids remained calm. I was impressed by the way they reacted. I would wager to say they were more calm and able to articulate themselves better than most adults that I've heard on some 911s. So it was impressive to hear that they were able to articulate things. I commend our call takers because both of the call takers that interacted with the caller remained calm, asked excellent questions that kept the person calm. The child was able to remain calm and provide the information that ultimately led to the officer being able to get on scene and quickly identify the person.
Have you linked the suspect to any other incidents like this in the area?
The suspect, and we have gone through his history. It's someone that has been known to the area for a while. We do have a number of interactions with him. Most of the interactions are misdemeanor type of offenses, generally what you would expect from someone that's unhoused and committing crimes. Not to say unhoused or committing crimes, but it's mainly trespass type instances, some thefts. There are, going back a few years, some batteries and some different things that have occurred in his history. We're still looking into kind of what his background is, but we can confirm at the moment that he's not a sexual offender, and this was not something that was easily going to identify him as a suspect in this situation or these types of behaviors.
Just how courageous would you say this is?
I'd say the kids were amazing to remain calm, to one, identify that something like this existed and that was wrong, and to, out of fear for their own safety, separate themselves enough to be able to still maintain, a visual of what was going on, and to call it in, and to remain calm, articulate themselves well. It's amazing. We do want to, recognize them at some point, but it's a difficult situation. We have to weigh the balance of praising, 10 or 11-year-old kids in public in the face of, society, with the fact that they still are two victims in this. And we have to remain cognizant of that. So our goal, I've been speaking with our chief, and our goal is probably to invite the children here in a more personal atmosphere, just have a conversation with them, praise them in a private setting. I've spoken to one of the guardians of the children already. They're open to that idea. I'm waiting to hear back from the other. So we do look forward to meeting with them again and talking to them, and hopefully turning what could be a very traumatic situation into a more positive interaction with us.
So, are there concerns there could be previous victims, that previous children witnesses?
Well,
maybe they were afraid.
Any type of situation like that, because we're monitoring social media and seeing how this plays out. We'll take a look at some of the comments. We encourage anybody to call us if there was a situation where someone observed this in the past, or there was some form of, like you said, heaven forbid there was a physical contact at some point, and like you said, the person just didn't feel comfortable coming forward or courageous enough to come forward. We always want to look into that, because any unknown victim is someone that we want to talk to and determine whether or not there's a way we can help make them whole.
Commander, the children called, and by the time police arrived, he was still there.
Yes.
Did he say anything when he was taken into custody?
No, he really wasn't. He was dismissive of things. He has obviously had contacts with us, so he was, indicating that, he made some comments like, "Hey, can you just trespass me from the park?" I'm sure you guys have had an opportunity to review the charging document from the county's website. So, some of those comments were articulated in that report, but he really didn't provide any comments that would admit guilt or any actual, utterances and such.
Homelessness has been such an extensive topic that we've covered in Melbourne.
Okay.
Just in case anyone sees this story and they ask, do you think there's any connection to this man's location, maybe to perhaps the closing of the soup kitchen, the Daily Bread downtown? Are we getting more complaints around town about homelessness as opposed to this downtown?
Well, obviously the city was, anticipating the closing of Daily Bread. We knew there were going to be changes. We're trying to settle into a new norm and try to figure out what those changes are going to, entail for us. We're actively, evaluating statistical data around parks and around areas that are, now becoming resources for individuals, like some of the pop-up facilities that are providing providing services for our unhoused. As of right now, we haven't seen a significant uprise. I can tell you where Daily Bread's location was on Fee Avenue. We are noticing that that area does not have the significant amount of congregation that it once did. The people that were just, spending hours and sometimes days at a time on a corner or on the sidewalk or in the parks that are in and around that area, the numbers have diminished in that particular area. We have noticed some other pop-up areas where it's being noticed more, but it's hard to say that that's attributed to the closing of the Daily Bread, because the citywide has had areas where people congregate, where there's areas where there's still wooded, properties where people can kind of get out of sight, out of mind. And those areas are throughout the city. I think the evolution of the recent years and the growth, just look at the apartment complex across the street and the different things that are going on around here. There's less and less places for people to get out of sight, out of mind. So it's more in our citizens' face that these people exist and they are here because they no longer have a place to go camp in the woods. they're now doing it on the street, or they're doing it near a bus stop, or they're on a bench, or, they're struggling with, having a place to actually go. And I do believe that that's why the new design, the new process of trying to find, housing that's affordable to get some of these people off the street is good. We haven't noticed a significant amount of crime increase recently that we could associate with that. And part of that may be due to the summer, because we almost have a winter effect here. Where, when it gets hot, like today, a feel of 109 degrees isn't necessarily comfortable. So it's kind of similar to in the north. When you get the winter time, people tend to migrate away from this area and go to different areas. So we may be experiencing kind of a calm right now just because of the summer that we naturally feel. So we can't attribute everything that's going on to the closing of Daily Bread. We're not really going to know what the new norm is probably for a year or two when things really settle in. When the new resources start coming online, then we'll start to really be able to associate what's going on with the new resources and the closing of some of the old. So,
Can you talk about park safety and how people can keep their kids safe, and, in summer and on weekends and stuff when they want to go to the parks?
Obviously, and this is nothing new. I mean, those of us that are older in the group know that things happened even back when we were young. There have always been people that would do bad things to good people, and I think today with social media and with the ability to recognize things so quickly and so freely, we're more aware of it. But it still goes back to the fact that if you're comfortable taking your children places, and you should feel comfortable, but you should be observing the areas. You should pay attention to your surroundings, pay attention to what's going on. In this situation, I mentioned earlier that the kids reacted better than a lot of adults. There may be a situation where an adult observed this behavior out of this individual before, but just went, "Ugh, I'm not going to call, I'm just going to leave." They may not see it as a big deal, or they may see it as, I don't want to get involved, or, there's any number of reasons why someone might not get involved in that situation. So it goes back to just paying attention to your surroundings. If your children are younger and unable to defend themselves, call for help, remove themselves from the situation, then it's probably in your best interest and your children's best interest if you go with them to these parks. These children were obviously, mature enough to recognize that there was an issue, separate themselves far enough from the issue to make sure that they weren't in harm's way, make a phone call. They had phones. They were able to make phone calls to the appropriate authorities, and they may very well have prevented something from happening to someone else later in time. So that's why, going back to the kids, I think it was extremely courageous on their parts, and it's being a good citizen and taking care of your community. Yes, there was one that we sent out with the original press release. Sure.
Thank you.
Yep.
You were asked about his criminal history. I didn't hear you comment on that. 2017 exposure arrest that I saw.
There is a case report that we were looking into that there was a similar type of event. He was arrested for that, but as far as I know, his ultimate charges didn't reflect that individual. What he was convicted of didn't necessarily reflect what he was arrested for. So there was reported behavior similar quite a few years ago, but we haven't solidified our knowledge of that.
Do you mean at the playground as well? The same playground?
Was that? It was another park. So if you're familiar with Jimmy Moore Park over there, it's known because of its tennis courts, but there is a playground over there as well, and a number of things.
And who reported from that time?
Do you recall?
I can know a lot about it.
Okay.
So in that report, a parent of a child that was visiting the park observed him masturbating at that time, so she called. When the officer arrived, he was still actively engaged in that activity, fled from the officer, and was ultimately located at the Walmart trying to hide and taken into custody there. So, but from what I said, what I could see in the court documents, he accepted a plea bargain, which is why I don't think that a registry or anything like that was included in that plea bargain deal.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, good.